Hello everyone and welcome to another video and what is another episode of Can It Run ... insert game title here. Now what we do in this series, if you don't know or you're new here, is we take older games, ones that are pretty graphically unimpressive, bring them into 2019 a little bit with a few graphical mods or overhauls and then see how well they run on some older graphics cards that would have otherwise been able to run the vanilla game just fine. Why do we do this? Well, we can. So, today's featured title is the one, the only GTA San Andreas. Now, in modern times, these graphics do look a little dated, but that, to me, doesn't stop this game from being a nostalgic masterpiece. I really enjoy San Andreas. I enjoyed it when it came out many years ago, even though an 11-year-old shouldn't have been playing it in the first place. And I still enjoy it today. Now, the graphics to some may put a few people off, so I thought, why don't we explore some of the graphical mods out there, a lot of which look horrible, if I'm being honest, and see what improvements can be made to this title. Now, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so some of you may not agree with this graphical overhaul, and some of you may think it looks fantastic. Either way, we're going to try and make San Andreas look a little more up to date, and then see how it runs on the graphics cards that would have otherwise been able to run it flawlessly. Now, it came to PC in 2005 or 2006, so any GPU from within the last 5, 6, 7 or maybe even 10 years should be able to handle this game just fine with the standard graphics. As you can see here, I'm running it on a GeForce 210, one of the worst GPUs of all time, and it's having no trouble at managing 30 frames per second, but let's get into the modding side of things. So San Andreas uses the renderware engine, which was also used in GTA 3 and Vice City, though with every subsequent release it was tweaked and improved. Despite the impressive visuals it offered mid-last decade, it does limit what can be done these days in terms of visual modifications. That's why a lot of San Andreas graphics mods don't look very impressive in 2019. There's only so much you can do when it comes to old games like this. A lot of San Andreas mods seem to make the streets soaking wet or increase the brightness and bloom too much. It's a sometimes effective method of hiding engine-based limitations if it's done with subtlety, though I've seen plenty of graphical tweaks that seem to showcase the aftermath of a tsunami. So I wanted to find something that used milder tweaks, maybe a mod that neutralised the colour palette a bit and enhanced the quality of the shadows without straying too much from the original aesthetic. After all, I didn't want to make San Andreas unrecognisable. That would be a sin. So what I ended up with was a game that looked like this. Using a combination of San Andreas 5 graphics, which aims to make things look more like GTA 5, and the Project Overhaul Particles and Effects package. I tried a couple of others too, like Enhanced HD CJ, Road Textures, a high-def pedestrian pack, and a vegetation mod, but they all led to this, a game crash. It can be a pain to mod this game. I've got the OG disc version, so it's a little more forgiving, but the Steam version owners will probably need to downgrade first. Even after doing so, it's not guaranteed all mods will work as they should. To be honest, I'd still rather have the vanilla graphics anyway, you know? They're warm and nostalgic, but that would defeat the purpose of this series, which, by the way, doesn't always have a happy ending. So if we look at a couple of screenshots, before and after here, starting with the kitchen, you'll see we now have shadows, a lighter interior with a more natural look, and a more GTA 4 style feel to things. Outside down the street and at the bar, we can pick up on the altered lighting and the improved vehicle reflections. We don't get clever path tracing style lighting here though, as expected. The lighting doesn't reflect off the car's shiny new paintwork, but the environmental details do, as you can see in this screen. Impressive. Although I couldn't get any tree mods working, which would have made things a bit nicer, I did think this screenshot looked especially nice, particularly with the improved water now surrounding one of Las Venturas' popular hotels. The little wedding chapel also benefited from these mods, but the flame and smoke was a little bit excessive. So how does the game run with these mods installed? Well, first we have to talk about how it runs before the mods. Here with a GTX 480, an old flagship GPU, the game runs at 90 frames per second on average, with everything including anti-aliasing turned up to the max. This is expected as San Andreas is almost 15 years old on PC, and even a GeForce 210 will handle it at 30 FPS just fine. If you haven't played it yet, for whatever reason, and you aren't sure if your PC can handle it, don't worry, it can. So what if you played the game, your system runs it fine, but you want to make some graphical changes like these ones? How do these graphical mods affect performance? Well, let's start with the GeForce 210. And yeah, this is what you can expect. Before mods it runs at 30 FPS at 1080p, but after mods it runs at a whopping 1 FPS. Seriously, this probably isn't playable, not even for me, and I would be happy with 20. It was time for drastic action, lads. I jumped into the menu and turned the resolution down to 480p, the lowest supported by the game. Thing is, dropping the graphical settings here won't do much with the graphics mods installed, so all you can do really is rely on a resolution drop. But even here the 210 struggle to maintain a solid 4 frames per second. I don't use the phrase PowerPoint presentation often, well actually maybe I do, but in this instance the use of the phrase is well deserved. Next up I tried an AMD card of the workstation variety, but one that can also handle the game with max settings and at least 60 FPS, performing close to the GTX 480. This is the W5000. They're fairly cheap these days too and still have modern driver support as well as the option to install AMD's Relive recording software. To start with, I took a flight over Los Santos, a situation that highlights the downfall of the extended draw distance, as you will experience a lot of pop-in. This is masked in the vanilla game by weather effects like fog. You can expect about 75 FPS without the mod installed, but here with San Andreas on steroids, we saw just 13 FPS on average. I'm starting to think this wasn't a good idea. I then took a trip to San Fierro where the cityscape really benefited from the more natural tones of brick and stone, though the frame rate tanked lower and lower. 12 was the average as we approached the Bay Area and the bridge. That water really does look good though. A resolution drop didn't help here at all. So what about the GTX 480? The card that set the benchmark at the beginning of this video. Our best chance of a playable frame rate. I saved it until last as I thought it might be our redeeming hero. Remember before how it handled the game at 90 frames per second? Well, you can forget about that now, or even half of that, or quarter, because 18 was the new average. What a performance. Stuttering down the strip at sub 20 FPS won't be for everyone, but at least it's better than the W5000 and 210, combined in fact. There are plenty of gameplay and visual mods for GTA San Andreas, and the fact is they will all perform differently, but this was just one or two of the ones that I liked the best and ones that I felt gave the best graphical upgrade, although we can't do much about the physics of the game and the overall clunkiness of the edges. This really does show its age even when we take the mods into consideration. It's a shame I couldn't get some of the other texture ones working, or the tree mods or plant mods for example, but that would have only made things worse in terms of performance. So what do we actually need to do? What card do we need in order to run this with 30 frames per second if you want to mod it in a similar fashion? Well, I found that minimum, you're probably looking at something like a GTX 680 or a 1050, something that the older 680 is equivalent to by modern standards. Now with a card like this you can retain 30 FPS quite easily, and the game will even touch 60 in some cases, but there will still be a few frame drops here and there. This mod really is quite demanding when it comes down to it. If I go back to what I said at the start of the video, I think San Andreas is still best enjoyed in its vanilla state, because with those original graphics comes the original nostalgia that you once got in your childhood. You know, that won't apply to everyone, especially those people who have never played this title before, but there's something very special about this game, and that doesn't rely on what it looks like by any means. So this has been another edition in the series Can It Run It? ... insert game title here. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I think we've learnt that San Andreas is best enjoyed in its vanilla state. I've wasted my day. Seriously though, if you want to use graphical mods, even for an old game like this, then you will need quite a bit of horsepower under your PC's hood. It's also worth noting that no matter how much power you have under the hood of your PC, that won't stop any graphical glitches that some of these mods may cause. I've installed mods in the past that have affected progression, when it comes to the story of the game. I've also encountered situations where I could see upstairs furniture through the ceiling in some interiors. This happened at CJ's house down Grove Street. It happened in a couple of other locations as well, and things like that are worth bearing in mind too. So there we have it. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.